So now we're going to look at how we can create simple animation controls in SVG. What's neat about this is you don't need to use any coding. This is part of the declarative SVG. So in this example, I'm going to create a little launch where you can fire a ball and it'll follow a path, and the user will trigger that by pushing a button, and of course we'll make the button as well. So this isn't horribly complex, but there are a fair number of details. So I'm going to go ahead and start, I think, by showing you the animation here. So here's the animation, and this is the way it ends up. So it's not running now, so I'm going to hit reload. You can see the ball has disappeared. There's my button. When I click it, the ball follows the path, and I've drawn the path with a dotted line just so we can see it. I think this is set for 10 seconds, and then the ball stops there. So let's look at the code and then we'll interact with this. So the first thing I do is I create the ball, and you'll notice that I'm using a G node, which is short for group. This is a way to kind of create groups of things that you can then treat as one thing. So for instance here, the ball is really composed of 3 circles. And this is kind of artificial. I could have just made one circle and used a gradient. But I have 3 different color circles. Making the ball. So I've noticed that I've given the ball an ID, which I'm going to use to refer to it. And the rest of the ball code is pretty straightforward. Let's see. So the inner ball has a stroke of 1. We ought to probably change these actually. And then we'll leave the outer stroke. Okay, so let me save that. And then you've seen this before. Notice the animation motion, the duration of 10 seconds. The rotate is auto. You can't really see the ball rotate because it's a ball. But basically what that does is that says as you move along the path, rotate the object you're moving to keep it oriented the same way to the path. So if I used a rectangle instead, it'd be much easier to see that. We've set the animation to run 1 time. And then here's one of the first new things we have. You see this begin launch button click. So launch button is the name of my button that I've created, and I've used a G for that because I've grouped a rectangle and text together. And so launch button click is a defined method that's in the SVG for when the user clicks on the launch button. So this says begin the animation when the user clicks on the launch button. And then fill equals freeze stops the animation so that the ball ends up at the end. What happened before I did this is the ball would disappear. There is also another problem. When I define the ball, it's defined at the 0, 0 position, and I don't really want it to show, and it does. So I had to put this opacity 0 in. But of course, I don't want the ball to be invisible when I run the animation. So then I had to add a set attribute right here. So set attribute name opacity to 0.8. Begin launch button dot click. So now you can see that not only do we start the animation when we click on the launch button, but we also change the opacity of the ball, which is now in the right position on the screen. So let's take this out and let me save that, and I'll show you the difference here. So if I reload this, you can just see that the ball is here at 0.0 and it's kind of visible now. So that's why I set that opacity. Let me go on and undo this here. So, and where's that freeze? Alright. Oh, there it is. Fill equals freeze. And I'll show you what happens when I don't have that either. Okay. So again, let's just take that out, save it, and then we'll go on back into, I'm using Chrome right now. It does work in Firefox. I was testing there before. Okay, so I've reloaded. Now watch what happens at the end of the animation. The ball will disappear and go back to that start position. So the fill equals freeze stops that when the animation is finished, and it just leaves it there. And then setting the opacity initially to 0, and then on the click making it visible makes it do what we want. So again, let me just fix that real quickly here. So again, this is fill equal freeze, which causes it to stay on this in the last position at the end of the animation, and then opacity equals 0 makes the ball be invisible. I also wanted to kind of show you something. Notice how this opacity equals 0 is being applied to the entire grouped set. So you can kind of think of it as inheriting the opacity from that, and obviously that's a really important technique. We've already seen how to do this, but just to review, we're using the M path to link to the path that we want the ball to follow. And one issue that I dealt with was I was having trouble getting the ball to center on the path, but it turns out if you define everything at 0, 0, that's also going to center it. And so then of course we had the problem of, hey, I don't want the ball to show up at that location at the start. I believe there's a way in SVG to use something called a symbol where it doesn't appear where you define it, like this does. So maybe later we'll see that. Anyhow, we have these click, and then you can see we have a begin, launch button dot click. There's also an end. I didn't show you that here because I didn't use it. So that's how you do the interactive thing. It should be pretty clear that you can make buttons. We haven't seen the G before, and so I used that twice here. Once to create a ball, which is really 3 circles with the same center point, and then the launch button, which is a rectangle and which has text in it. And I played around a little bit to get that all aligned in that. I'm not sure I know all the fine points of doing this yet. Okay, so I hope you're enjoying this. That's our next video. Let's see if I can